Hi guys, I'm Brad and welcome to the Great Hollywood Rewrite. This is the podcast where we take a look at some of cinema and TV's most troublesome titles and have a little poke around under the hood. I'm joined today by Helen. Hi Helen.
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast. This is your first go on this version of the script department's Hollywood Rewrite. How are you feeling?
Yeah, really good. Really, really good. I've got lots of notes, so strap in.
Awesome. This week, Helen and I have been asked to take a look at Passengers, which was the quasi-controversial film from 2016, written by John Spates and directed by Morton Tildum. But before we sacrifice our ethical foundations and doom a stranger to a slow and terrifying death in deep space, if you haven't done so already, take a look at our website, thescriptdepartment.net, for all our latest projects. And you can follow us on social media. We're on YouTube, as you might be looking at us. We're on Apple Podcasts. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. It all helps us. And another thing you can now do, if you haven't done so already, is buy us a coffee. And you can help contribute to making more bits of quality content like the one you're about to consume. So, Helen, Passengers, 2016. It looked amazing on the trailers. Everyone was super excited about it. And it hit the box office and people were a bit mad about it, like in various parts. And it was quite divisive as well. I know you've got strong opinions on this film because we spoke about it a little bit already. What are your feelings about Passengers?
I think aesthetically, it's a very good film. It borrows a lot from WALL-E, which was the discussion I had with Marcus before about the sort of right down to the music, the little bots that are there, the style and the purpose of the ship. Very, very similar. It was a bit like WALL-E for grown-ups. And I also couldn't help then looking at WALL-E a little bit differently, which I will leave you to ponder. I won't go into.
Don't ruin WALL-E.
I'm not going to ruin WALL-E. I'll let you do that yourselves. I think it is a film I have gone back and watched again and again, and I think it is a bit because I've got some issues with it that I keep going, really? And then I've got, I think I still keep going back to it because aesthetically it's a really nice film to just keep immersing your imagination in. It's quite nice. I have a bit of a thing about that concept of being stranded on a desert island. I like that as a story function, and I think that's possibly why I keep revisiting it.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, the space isolation films, I'm always there for them. So when this came out, I was like, yes, I'm here for this. And I sort of sat down to watch it, and I was like, first act was really good. I really liked it. I was like, yes, this is it. This is what I'm here for. And then he makes that choice, and it's a bit like, oh, this isn't the film I thought it was going to be. And I don't know. I mean, I don't mind seeing people do the wrong thing in a film, but then for the film to make it right feels a bit weird.
It's interesting what you say, actually, because I think the first and second act were fine. It's the third act that's, for me, where I'm a bit kind of, it does that even though it's all implausible, they're in space and, all the things that they're facing, the way that they're behaving just felt very implausible and fantastical. And I think that's definitely where I snag, is in that third act.
There's certainly a sort of a fairy tale nature to the way they are. The sort of idea of like a true love, and it's like, really, like, I don't know. It felt a bit weird, and I didn't understand it immediately. But after a few hours of sitting with it, I was like, oh my god, like. Because I wanted it to be good. And I was like, oh my God, it's, there are good parts, but it's just the core of it is just, there's something, I don't know, creepy or unsettling about it, but not in like a fun sort of slasher movie way. It's like, oh, this feels like a misstep. And I think it showed in the the ratings that it got. It didn't get all bad reviews, but I don't know if you've seen like the metric reviews and the IMDb's and everything. It's sort of like 40% or something like that. It's like that was it's a big film. It should have been a
By
tentpole, I guess. But
2016, we
yeah,
expect more of our female characters, and I think, not to be harsh on Spates, but I think we also expect more of our male characters. And following Me Too and various other things that have happened, especially in more recent years, you kind of hope that there's a purpose behind a character like Jim behaving in that way and making those decisions. And I think as a writer, I certainly feel responsible for making sure that if I'm depicting a male character in that way, or a female character in, someone who's quite passive, there's a point to that it's not disingenuous, it's not satisfying a male ego. Yeah.
yeah. I think there are certain beats that it missed. I mean, and I don't think it was too early either. I don't think many films are too early for sort of writing into intersectionality and things like that. But it's just, it felt like it was clumsy, like you say, and it was just, I don't know. There were parts of it that felt gratuitous, and it was like, come, this is, we can do better than this, guys. But it was pretty film, problems with the scripts, so that's good why we're
Yeah.
here.
Interesting what you say about it being
um,
quite fairy tale, actually, because I immediately, caught up when you watch the film. Aurora is Sleeping Beauty, and in this film, she is Sleeping Beauty. He's observing her and falls in love with her and wakes her up, and so that wasn't lost either. And the name of the ship is the Avalon, which is allegedly King Arthur's island, the island that King Arthur forged
yeah,
Excalibur, or something along those lines. So, again, that and the link with Michael Sheen's character, who's also called Arthur, perhaps that traditional fairy tale story was Spates' original inspiration in a way. Who knows?
I often wonder about the talking about Michael Sheen, the Shining aspect to it, and it's like, is that just a Shining themed bar, or is that his subconscious putting something really creepy in there? Because it's, yeah, there's been a short circuit somewhere in this script, and the Avalon is almost the Axiom, and it's like, oh my god, what's happening here? Where are we going? So yeah, there's a whole Disney slash fairy tale slash thing going on here. So it's yeah, it's a pretty interesting film to try and dissect. So we've got a few talking points to sort of rattle through and see if we can sort of twist this thing around a bit and see if we can come up with any better ideas. We might not. We might disappear with our tails between our legs and go, okay, this is the best we could do. But I'm hoping we'll get somewhere with it. So the first talking point is that there aren't many surprises in this film. It feels quite Route One, and you can't, with their relationship and the mechanical errors with the ship, all of those things. You kind of know they're happening, and not because they're foreshadowed, just because they probably would do in a script like that. So it feels quite predictable in a way. Yeah, the second point is the perspective of the characters and the protagonists. So the perspective makes it feel weak, and I know there's endless conversations about this online about which perspective it should really be from to give it the effect. And we're asked to sympathise with someone who did something that's kind of unforgivable for their own benefit. Yes, they were desperate, and yes, they were losing their mind. But then it sort of leans into this idea of, Stockholm syndrome and male-dominated environments and coercive relationships and things like this. That isn't what we see exactly in there, but it's supporting. Well, I guess we are seeing that. I mean, it's supporting it in such a way where it's a bit like, oh, I don't know if this is the right way to go. So I know that'll be a big meaty talking point for us to get stuck into. The third one is about the third act. Again, it's very prescribed in a way that we knew the ship was dying, and that their final mission would be fix the ship, and then it gets there, and that's it. The ship is dying, and their final mission is to fix the ship. There's no twist, there's no change. That is just exactly what's happening. And Lawrence Fishburne was very much Deus ex machina with his access code, and he was the guy who could wake up and it was just a bit like, oh, did they did they get to this point in the script and go, oh, we need a cataclysm? Like it feels again there's a prescribed nature to that the acts in the script. And the last part was the ending. So wherever we go with it, if we change the perspective, if we change the genre, whatever we do, the current ending feels really flat and unusual. And Andy Garcia, I'm only going to say it once. Like, it was an unusual ending. So I think there are a number of ways we can sway this, even with the slightest different little twists. But I guess we'll leave that to the end, so we know where we're going with the script. So if we go back to the first one, which was the what's the best way to say it without being it was predictable. There was a predictable nature to the film. There weren't many surprises in there. How did you feel the structure of it went, particularly around like midpoint twist and point of no return and things like this? How did you feel it was
Yeah, I
structured?
think I think you're absolutely right. There's only so many ways you're going to depict, that last man on earth type feel, and the isolation that he has. And I think when you think about the human condition that is to be alive, your five basic functions, the whole food, shelter, warmth, water, and love. Jim woke up and had all of those in abundance, and he didn't have love. And that is quite a very raw and very basic sort of story model. And you could take away a couple of those or one of those, and they would, that would be a really good sort of thing for him to hit. That's his desire, that's his want and his need, I guess. And so that first bit where he's just kind of stranded on his own, he's going to be miserable, that he's going to crave company, that is coming. So what is he going to do about it with 3,000 other people on board? And you kind of think, okay, well, is the sensible answer that he's going to wake up a couple of people, or is he going to wake up just one? And I think what's disappointing about it is that it's predictable that of course he's going to go for the most beautiful girl on the ship, and he's going to wake her up. So yeah, that was very predictable. And I think I completely agree with you again about the ship and how they needed to come together, and the convenience and the fact that he was an engineer and could actually do the repairs that were necessary. If she'd woken up on her own, they'd have been completely screwed. So there's that predictability as well. And the ending. We'll get there. What did you think?
Yeah, well, I don't dislike films that are predictable. I don't hate them because they're not trying to, particularly if they're not trying to be something else. So I've had a couple of conversations about The Grey Man recently. I used to watch a lot of action films when I was in my 20s. I used to love them. So now and again, I'll delve back in, and I really liked The Grey Man. It was just a dumb film, people punching each other in the face, and then I won't spoil the end, but it was a very predictable thing. But I don't think this film knows it's predictable. I think that's where it falls down a little bit, because it's technically beautiful, and it looks like it's going to be a really big, well-known blockbuster sci-fi film that people talk about for years. You see the poster, you see the trailer, and you're like, wow, we've got a big thing happening here. And it's sort of like fizzled out quite quickly because of I think that although it was an awful thing to watch, you knew what was happening immediately. Like when I say the awful thing to watch, I mean the fact that he chooses to kill someone. Basically, that's his choice, and he chooses the pretty girl that he wants a relationship with, which makes it even more creepy. And it's just there is you could see it coming, and you can see it coming from a mile away. And there was sort of an aspect to it that I felt it needed some more surprises in it. It needed something that you didn't expect to happen. So I think this is going to end up being no surprises. Is going to end up being an umbrella for all the other points that we talk about, because there are a lot of things that happen in this film where it might have been better if we didn't know they were going to happen before they did.
Yeah.
So something that changes the direction of the film very quickly doesn't work if you can see it coming from 2 acts away. So I think going forward, what we'll try and do is inject a little bit more surprise into the other talking points, um, just so we've got a. I guess it's a rule of thumb to sort of operate by. This needs to have a few twists and turns, otherwise it's just going to end up in the same sort of predictable trash bin that we found it in the first place.
Yeah, and
Um,
they could have played on that. You know, you can write something that's really predictable and play on the fact that the audience know or think they know where it's going, and just lead us down the garden path and just pull the rug right out. And that would have made, you know, if that had come out, I don't know, maybe someone had woken Jim up and they've been stalking them, and we don't really put two and two together, or you know, that there's I'm already on it, but you know, there were many opportunities where they could have played on our predictable idea of what was going to happen, and that may have just saved it in a way. But they did
nice.
what they didn't do when I get that out again, but with the predictability of it, you know, like when they lost the gravity, um, one thing I wasn't expecting, and what actually drew me to the film in the first place, was someone had described it, you know, that they had this swimming pool in space, and what actually would happen if you're in the swimming pool, it was in the swimming pool, and you lose gravity. And that to me was a concept that I had to see. That's what drew me to the film in the first place. And actually that wasn't predictable. That was definitely an unusual thing to throw in there. So it wasn't completely, but just something, little nuggets.
Yeah, so I think the main set pieces are the points where we could see them coming. I think stuff like the
Yeah.
gravity, I thought that was amazing. Like when that happened, I was like, oh yeah, I'd never thought about what that would mean. And you know, there were that for me felt like it was in the realm of a groundbreaking scene.
Mm.
Like I'd not really seen that
Well, on
before.
the flip side,
Um,
though, when the whole ship lost gravity, that massive container haul didn't seem to be upset at all by any of the loss of
yeah,
gravity. That was still
yeah.
immaculate when you went back into it. So
There's a few
interesting
questionable laws of
issues there.
physics going on here, but I think we're already tilting into perspective here. So the perspective um, was one of the main issues. I think we might both agree on this, that
Definitely.
having it from just Jim's perspective made it feel uh, voyeuristic, and I don't know how do you feel about it just being Jim, just his perspective.
I think that's where half the predictability lies, and it's a disappointing predictability. It's kind of you know, if this is in the future and that's what men are like, still, you know, that's not a good, you know, for my children, my grandchildren, you know, that's a horrible feeling to kind of imagine that 100 years could go by and there's still men out there who want to behave in that way, and you know, manipulate women's lives and take away their freedom. I mean, there was no metaphorical removal of that freedom. He actually took it away, um, and she forgave him for it, which was just even more infuriating. But it's interesting because when you think about flipping that perspective over, it completely changes the genre. And I wondered, um, in the car driving home today, I was thinking, actually, what if you don't switch the perspectives, you switch the genders round? What if actually Jim is Jane and Aurora is Adam, and you know, you know, she wakes up first and is the engineer and is lonely. And it's funny because I was talking to my 13-year-old about it, and we were both in agreement that a woman probably wouldn't wake up a man to spend eternity with. She would wake up another woman. So it would be
I
a
think you're
different
probably right.
story.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I mean, it is just. I'd be really interested to see what the public reaction would be to that as well. If the film had have been um, her waking up first and then waking
Mm,
up him, I think it would have been quite
mm.
dramatic. I don't. I think she would have ended up being like a seen as like a Glenn Close Fatal
Yeah, yeah,
Attraction kind of
totally.
thing. And again, that's a societal thing that we're all again looking at ourselves and going, why is that still a problem, that a man can do this and a woman can do that, but if we switch it round then people get mad. I mean, people were mad
Mm.
anyway because of how, I don't know, it's a theft of something, a theft of a life, and then just simpering and forgiving them. And it's like, it's, I don't know if just switching the genders would be the silver bullet for this, because I think people would still be
Mm.
annoyed. Like, people like to get annoyed, and it's like, oh, look at her, the bunny boiler, and it's, I can hear it now, and it just makes me shudder. I'm like, no, no, don't, let's not go down that route. It would probably, we might end up making it worse.
Do you think it would have been
Like,
different if he'd woken up more than one person?
I'm really interested in that, because it's like, if you think, if he if he wakes them up in succession, so if he wakes one up first and then another one and another one, he'd have to constantly
Mm.
hide that he was
He was
doing
doing
it.
it.
And again, like you were saying about a genre switch, it would make it really
Become a
creepy
bit Lord of the
that
Flies,
he's,
wouldn't it? I think.
yeah. Well, he kind of be like a really slow intergalactic serial killer,
Yeah,
because he'd be like creeping around and opening the thing, and in 90 years they'll be
that's
dead.
right. But kind of in
It's like,
reverse. Yeah. So yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I think that I love the idea of him sort of being, there's sort of a darker thread
Mm.
to it. Like, I think that could be quite an interesting thing. And I know we've both chatted about, if it was from perspective wise, if it was from her perspective and we didn't know that he was doing this,
Mm.
he'd be a
Yeah, he
monster
would
in this
be.
film. Like it would be really, really scary. Like, the fact that she would slowly find out, and then the third act would be The Shining,
Yeah.
basically.
Well, it's not far off. I mean, if you think about, when she has decided she hates him and she's on the verge of, pummeling his face in, and then they're living completely separate lives in this same ship, and he can't bear that. He cannot bear to just, let her cool down, let her, they've got like 40, 50 years or whatever they've got left together. They've got a long time to kind of make peace and get on, but he forces that down on her, and she's running around the ship at meeting physical literal dead ends, and he's booming
Yeah,
his apology and his all of that at her. There's no escape. She can't even put her hands over her ears. It's a violation of another level, and yet she still manages to find a point where she forgives him and can't bear to be without him. And I think if it were me and he was standing there going, "Oh well, I'm going to have to stand here and hold this open while clear the jet," I'll be like, "Okay,
mm.
can you get on with it? It's the end of tea time. My button.
Go on,
You're
off
on
you
the button
go. Thank
now.
God he's gone.
Hurry up.
You're not coming back
Do
in
it.
here.
Nice knowing you."
Yeah, I mean, it's that. I mean, we've spoke about it already, and I've seen a couple of conversations in various places online about it, and there's these sort of chats about how just that one switch would
Mm.
immediately just switch everything up. And I think it's a fascinating idea that just by seeing it from the and the other main character's view, it changes it so dramatically, like so
Mm.
dramatically. I don't know if I've ever considered that sort of change in a film to be so effective. Um, any film that I've seen, because it's you can always, they're always so
Mm.
interlinked, but because there's only two people in this isolated spaceship, it just has so much more effect, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
But okay, so
so yeah, there's,
if we switch perspectives, we started the film with Aurora waking up. She finds there's another guy on the ship, and she's kind of working out what has happened with him, and they're having a lovely time, and it does feel like this serendipitous kind of romance that's happening. And then she finds out the truth from Arthur, and it becomes this sinister betrayal. Everyone's on the edge of their seats, like, no, he didn't. Oh my goodness. And then what? The ship starts falling apart. She still hates him. Gus kind of tries to bring them back together, but then what? So, does she still forgive him? Where does that tend, like, is he still this, are we still in thriller genre? How do we keep it in thriller genre if we've swapped the perspectives in that third act?
Yeah, so I think a swap of the perspective would be to give it the effect. I think we'd have to go down a different route with their relationship, um, and even Gus, he's come in as like almost a mediator for their relationship, as well as the guy who's got all the codes
Yeah.
that can get
He
them,
clearly picks the side though,
get.
doesn't he? Because he celebrates the fact that she's very good looking. So he's not
Yeah,
not like, you're a complete absolute idiot. Why have you done that? You've just stolen this poor girl's. I'm going to throw you in the brig. He doesn't do that. He's like, damn. And that's
yeah. There's definitely a lot of male gaze in this script, like without a doubt. And it's there are parts of it that are funny because they are so, like, I laughed at that because I was like, it's so gratuitous. There are parts of this film that just don't care, and I was laughing at how brazen it was rather than
yeah,
the reason for the script itself. I think with Gus, I mean, it's even if we had him. I mean, he obviously solved a lot of problems in the original script, but it's whether we need
yeah,
him. Is because if we go down the route of him not being there and her having to kill him, basically, one of them's going to kill the other one. If we do go down the Shining route, whoever wins is going to die anyway.
yeah,
They're going to die. They're just going to die on the ship on their own.
exactly.
And it's like, it's a fascinating ending because it would be like you've won but you've lost. Well done, kind of thing. Like there's quite an interesting concept in there. It's almost like one of those old westerns where all the good people die
Yeah.
and the bad guys ride off into the sunset, kind of
I did
thing.
wonder. I know Arthur is just an android, and his purpose is just to be a barman. But wouldn't it be cool if actually he could have been reprogrammed to access the ship's computers and be the one that gives them the codes? And I don't know. Maybe that would have been a better solution than Gus, because I quite like Arthur as as the mirror, throwing back the how that person is feeling, or just pointing out, you sort of do know the answer, but you need me to verbalize it so that you can feel better about that. But I felt that he actually was a strong character, and it would have been a really miserable film not to have had a little bit of lightheartedness from him, and he's a great actor as well.
Mm. Yeah, he's great in that part. I think he does. It's even where he corrects them that he's an android, not a robot, and like little things like that where he's not quite self-aware, but there's some. It's a good AI. It's intelligent. It's a good AI. I found it slightly depressing where he was like you say, like a mirror, and he was telling Jim what he should do and how he should feel to make him feel better. I was like, oh my god, it's a computer program. Like, and I don't think we're far off that. And there was like, we can now just talk to Siri and get like
Yeah.
the bit of life advice that we need. I was like, oh no, that's where we're going. But I mean, the Arthur things, again, we don't necessarily want a solve it
No.
all like solution, but he could be part of it. I mean, if it's from her perspective and she's found out, it doesn't have to be from Arthur, but it could be. Eventually, she might just, if she's won, if she's killed Jim, if that's the way we go with it, eventually she might just sort of say, I wish I could get into such and such. I wish I could get there. And it's like, I can do that. No one's ever asked me.
Yeah.
And it could be the idea that Jim's just been so hell bent on getting a human that he never even asked
Yeah, or
Arthur,
just so
because all that
wrapped
would
up
have
in
been off
his own
screen anyway.
emotions that he didn't even think
Exactly.
to problem solve that. I quite
Yeah.
like the way that Arthur divulges to Aurora the truth, and I think it's so subtle because Jim has said to him, "Don't tell her that I told you. Don't tell her that I woke her up." But then he clearly gives an instruction, a command. There's no secrets between us, and that is the moment that Arthur's like, "Oh, okay, so I'm free to talk about whatever I want now." So that barrier is lifted, but it's so gentle and seamless. It's not a big deal, but it's enough for us to go, oh no. And you're kind of there with Jim maybe just for a moment until you realize the weight of the situation for her. But it might have been more impactful if we
Yeah,
didn't know that.
I think with him that there was some... Sorry, Helen, go on.
No, I was just gonna just 'cause we were stuck in Aurora's perspective, and that conversation still happened with there's no secrets between us, and Arthur then divulges it. That landing for us, we're kind of in this genre of it's a romance, it's beautiful and lovely, and then oh my goodness, no, it is not. This is a thriller. She's stuck on a ship for eternity with a creep. What is she going to do? What is he going to do? So yeah, as a moment, I think that's definitely a key point that I think hopefully we can both agree should stay.
Yeah, it's how she finds out, I guess, isn't it?
Mm.
That's it's a nice way of her finding out. I think through the Jim perspective, one of the unbelievable bits is that he told him,
Mm.
and so you could probably just not tell him. Like, you don't have to tell him that you did it, like, because he already questioned it and said, "Don't do that." So
Yeah,
there's this whole point that he told him and he didn't have to, which felt a bit weird or
you,
weak. But if you flip it the other way and you don't see him do that, you might get the idea that he's been, if Jim goes away, Arthur might be like, right, he's crazy. He might go
yeah.
further than that. He might go, right, you were in danger. I couldn't tell you when he was here, but he woke you up. Don't trust him. And maybe it's a bigger,
That is an interesting point,
divulge.
actually. Why is Arthur loyal to Jim and not to Aurora? Why is he kind of protecting Jim, but then not kind of seeing that would have that is a very sinister thing to do. But I think it's also interesting to imagine that Jim wakes up, he spends a year with Arthur. He has a companion, he has someone to talk to. He can't do anything with him, but he still has company to a degree. So that tells us that he wants to wake Aurora up for love, for desire. That's not the companionship type, because he's already kind of getting that, which I think that makes it even more sinister, that it's not just I'm lonely and I need someone, because he's sort of already got that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he didn't just wake up anyone, did he?
No,
He woke up the prettiest girl he could find, and it's like,
obsessed over her, read all of her stuff, found
yeah,
everything he could about her. It's
yeah. It was that bit was like, Facebook stalking a
yeah,
little
we're
bit, wasn't it?
crossing
It
into
was,
you territory, aren't we? Yeah,
yes, yeah, very much. It felt quite modern day rather than futuristic,
mm.
like that
Yeah,
aspect of it. And I was like, okay, this, if they intended to, they would have been mirroring something to say this still happens,
yeah,
but in fact, it just happened that they just stumbled through that. I don't think they intended that to feel
no,
creepy, but it did feel quite, unusually creepy. For considering how they were trying to show us, with the music and the way that he was smiling, and oh, this is a nice thing,
mm,
and it's like, is it? It feels like it's not. Yeah. So I think I think we're probably angling down having it from her perspective,
definitely.
because
Mm.
it just makes it so much more of a thrilling thing, and so you can really it's then not trying to disguise what it
Yeah,
is.
all
It's not
glamorized
trying
or
to
just lie,
apologize
or
or
yeah,
make up. Yeah, yeah. There's no one needs forgiving in that
mm.
situation. um and I like the Arthur thing. Like, is he gonna, I don't know, would it work that he sort of feels a bit like a hostage to Jim? Do you know what I mean? That he's like, he's going to turn him off if he does anything he doesn't want to do, kind of thing. Has he been bad to Arthur? And it's only uncovered when he's like, right, I'm telling you right now that he's crazy. Like, do not trust him, kind of thing.
Mm.
Because she needs to find out somehow. And if it's from Arthur and he is a creep, then it could probably be quite a dramatic
Yeah.
thing. rather than him just going, oh, and blah, 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 and dropping it in there in conversation, almost like it was an accident kind of thing. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I don't know. It's interesting. I think I've tied myself in a knot really because I still really like the way that she finds out, but it doesn't make sense to me now I've said it out loud why Arthur was so loyal to Jim and not to her. If he's a barman and his role is, as he says, to sort of serve the people and be that kind of comforting person and just soundboard and all of that, then why has he chosen one life over another? Why has he chosen to protect Jim and not her? And that puts a bit of conflict in my mind then as to the motives of Arthur, how he was programmed, who programmed him, why did they, is it a gender thing? Is he programmed to sort of not tell men secrets and and all of that lot, or is he programmed to kind of trust the one that he knows the best? Or I don't know how else she could find out without you making it expositionally or just a bit kind of, I don't know, she finds her circuit board from her thing under his bed or something, which I think would have been really awful, as an awful device, I think. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I wonder if what if Arthur is allied with Jim and he's bad because Jim's hacked him or whatever. I mean, Jim's an engineer, but maybe he could be beyond that in this version. Maybe he could be someone who could hack into an independent robot rather, or an android as he is, but he's not got the ability to get into the ship and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I mean that would add
is there...
that would add to kind of this sort of idea of how he's controlling everything. We found out that he's controlling. He's manipulated her life. That's his now. Her freedom is taken because of him. And maybe perhaps we're also discovering that he's done the same to Arthur. That perhaps he's the one that's just set the ship on a terrible path of destruction in an attempt to get her to forgive him and fall in love with him again. And
she's just giving me a really good idea, actually.
Maybe she could play along with that, but at the last minute, not rescue him when she's floating off into space.
Well, what if she finds out she's not been the first?
Oh, I like that. Yeah,
there's another one or two or a bunch of them, like at the back of the basketball.
Of women floating around the ship outside. Just
yeah, so it'd have like a psycho kind of thing going on,
or one that Jim
like the Bates
got rid of, but actually went round the other side, came back, has been living and haunting him.
Oh, that's good, isn't it? So yeah, that adds a whole other level to like the creepy nature of it. If Aurora they're 30 years into their trip, I guess. He could have been doing it since the first year. He might have woke up for the first year. Well, he'd probably be too old by then, wouldn't he? But he could have done it a few times already and just killed them or marooned them on part of the ship where they can't get out or something. I mean, I think I probably prefer the Norman Bates shriveled up husk kind of route, because she can find that, and it's like, maybe the Arthur thing isn't. He says it, and she's like, "Oh, he's malfunctioning or something. Like there's something wrong with him," and doesn't quite get it. But you can imagine that it would eat away at someone to have heard that, and he'll just deny it. The big. In the original film, the big thing for her is that he says yes. But I guess he'd say no.
Yeah.
He would almost certainly, if there's this creepy, murdery guy, he'd probably just say no. There's something wrong with him. And then that would probably eat away at her. And she might go snooping and find some literal skeletons in his closet.
Literal shriveled skeletons. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm on board with that one too. I think that's decided.
Yeah, that could be good. Yeah, who doesn't like a shriveled husk in a thriller film? So that I think that's fun, and then that leads us into the third act, where we've got the ship's going to die, I don't think it needs that, does it? We don't need
No,
ship death in
no, we
this.
don't.
They're marooned already.
Yeah, and you're kind of you're distracting us away from what the real issue is here, and I wonder if it was kind of a bit like I've created this tension and I don't know where to go with it. Um, because I assume if the genre is that it's supposed to be this sci-fi romance, then it has to end happily. And how are you going to do that? And the only way you're going to do that is to take Jim and put him in such a compromised position that, of course, you'll realize that actually I don't want to be without you, even though I've only known you for a few months. um, yeah. So it's a tough one, isn't it? And I think I've also wondered whether the slow destruction of the ship was sort of almost in a weird way this sort of pathetic fallacy of how their situation was brewing, because things started to really go wrong when they started to really go wrong. Um,
Yeah.
but I think you're right. It does feel a bit too much. It's a bit too convenient that they find the solution and they've managed to get open the door that's got this massive hole glaring into space, but neither of them are freezing or suffocating or imploding. But then they manage to cover the hole perfectly and get away and then discover the next problem. And despite it being a
Yeah.
nuclear reactor and it's hitting the glass and being really violent and aggressive, it holds itself together until Jim's gone out and done his heroic thing. That kind of thing really frustrates me in films, when it's like, oh, just let them all die.
But it was I mean, it's basically the only way that this version of it could have her forgive him. Man, fix ship. Thank you, man. And it's like, oh, come on. Like, it felt a bit. I can't. What did she say? I can't survive without you on this ship alone. And it's like, oh, you're better than that. Come on. Like, why would you just? Why would you say that? And why would you forgive him? Like, in the it just felt very rushed and very quick. And it was like they had to put the ship and 5,500 people in peril for her to forgive him. And it's just like, oh, come on. Like, I don't think we need, in our version anyway, I don't think we need an exploding ship for
No,
it to have an explosive ending, do
no,
we?
not
I
at
think it's
all.
going to be quite a,
I think you could
yeah,
almost write off all those malfunctions and get rid of them and replace them with those shriveled husks that are hiding in the broom cupboard and being dragged around by robots in the service tunnels and things like that. You could definitely make it something that doesn't need this external force. Yeah.
yeah, very much. I think with if we have our third act as it's making me think of Fresh. You seen
No.
Fresh? It starts off and it feels just like a dating film. It's quite sweet. There's like a meet cute in it, and it's like, oh great, and then it turns into this like horrific thing, and the switch is immediate, and you see where it is, and I found that so affecting, and I think we've got an opportunity to do that here. That it feels like it's happy and nice, and it's like, oh no, you've been woken up, he's going to help you, he got woken up as well, you're the same, oh, you're going to get married, and then it's like, no, he's a murderer, and he's murdered a bunch of women before that were you before you woke up, and it's like that. It's horrible, and it's like, yes, I can get on board with that. I like the idea that it's almost two different
I've
films.
got an idea.
So we start off with yeah,
So let's take Gus. Let's not make him so uh, about to die and maybe shave off 10-15 years. And it becomes a little bit like Z for Zachariah. Then there's two macho men and one woman. And how are they going to manage themselves and their fragile masculinity in that? Are they going to, they're clearly not going, they're always going to be in competition with each other, whether there's a woman around or not,
yeah,
because there'll be two very, butch guys who, this is my ship. So throw in a woman and it becomes a very dangerous environment for her, but also for each of them. I quite like the idea of that, especially if for example, you've got Jim, who he might be the one who's woken her up, but he's the engineer. He's probably the one that she's going to be most attractive to. But perhaps this other guy is, someone from the crew still, who does have the solutions and the access and all of that lot. So in a way, that survival model is just as attractive to her. I don't like the idea that she's
Nice.
kind of in this, do I want him or him? But I like the idea that they think that she will want one of them. I still like the idea of her
Yeah,
walking
that's
away on her
nice. I
own.
like that.
But
I like the idea of him, Gus being a better version of
yeah,
Jim.
like
Can do everything Jim can do and better. And the person that would be have the most effect on is Jim, because he's the only man, and he's completely obsessed with Aurora and with whoever came before Aurora. So he's probably not happy that Gus is around. I guess Gus can be relatively, and Aurora could be relatively ambivalent. Like they not ambivalent. They could be not even
yeah,
have started the thought in their head
yeah,
about, oh, they're quite attractive and useful, but Jim is straight on it, like, because he's a lunatic. Like, he's just, oh no, there's another man here, there's another cock in the hen house kind of thing. And it's like, I can imagine Gus coming up with a solution like, oh look, I can get us all back in hypersleep, and he'd just get killed. He'd just kill him. Like, he would just finish him off straight away. He'd be like, no way, this is my paradise. I don't need to go to Homestead 2. This is my crazy psycho killer paradise, and you're going to ruin it. So he'd kill him. And maybe that is another catalyst that gets Aurora on the case of, right, he's dead. I'm going to go hunting around more. The android said he woke me up. This is not right. And then she starts finding Aurora Mark 1 and 2.
Another small plot hole is there's 5,000 people on this ship, and they're not on the ship for very long when they're awake, but there's only one auto dock, and if that one auto dock is the only thing that can be used for life support, I mean, that doesn't feel like a lot of forethought. So do you think maybe there are more than one, but Jim hides them, or there's some stowed away in that cargo hall?
I don't know. I mean, the whole point that these things are flawless is just silly. Like, really?
Yeah.
They will never break this mechanical device with transistors and cogs or whatever it's made out of that will wear down over time. It will never fail. That just doesn't make any sense to me. So then for them, to make the jump of them only having one auto dock, I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, it doesn't. Fine if we're there anyway. If we're in this world where machines never break and you only need one thing to fix 5,000 people and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was unusual. So with the docks not failing, I almost think if we didn't have that aspect of it and Jim just couldn't fix it, so he was stuck outside of it, but then Gus wakes up and he goes, oh, no, you just need to put that chip in there. That would just, you can just imagine all of these things that he's doing would just drive him crazy. Almost like his own ineptitude has driven him wild because this guy's woken up. He's been here for 5 minutes and he can solve all their problems. So yeah, I think the one auto dock is a bit of an issue, isn't it, in the script? I almost think that just needs to get rid of it.
It'd be good if it was, kind of a bit like, you could still have it that there's 5 auto docks, but 4 of them get busted somehow. In Rora's rage, she goes around trying to get him and accidentally crowbars the rest of them or something. I don't know, but so that there is kind of, because I always kind of think, well, is it important? Is it important that in the grand scheme of it all, the whole concept of the spaceship and all of the little robots and all of that lot, that's brilliant and very well thought through. Does it matter there's only one auto dock? And you think, well, actually, if it was enough for me to be distracted from the main plot because I couldn't believe that out of 5,000 people, there was just one machine, one life support machine. Then that's ruined it because I'm not thinking about the plot anymore. I'm thinking about the logistics. Maybe that's just how my brain is wired. But if you don't want to be distracted, you want to be completely immersed and completely, following along. But maybe if it was a different genre, different perspective, things like that would just wash over you because you'd be so engrossed.
Well, I guess if I'm trying to unpick it and make it a reason, oh yeah, it's fine that there's one auto dock. I guess we're imagining that the only way people can get healed is an auto dock, right? Because it's like it's a doctor machine, right? And you put someone in it and it heals them. I'm sure they'll still have other stuff around. Like I guess if we think about Prometheus, where they've also got an auto dock, which is used in a much more horrific way. They didn't even know there was one on board. They don't know there's one on board. They're like, okay, what's this? This is I didn't know we had this, and it's like it's a complete medical auto dock that's been put on board for Wayland, also who they don't know is there. So I guess they might have other things, but I don't know. So I think something that poses that many questions is a distraction, isn't it? It's like what everyone's just like, well, why is that like that? And there were other questions like, why can he not get the coffee out of that machine, but he can get all sorts of other stuff at the other restaurants? He can get coffee off Arthur. He asks him for coffee at one point.
Yeah, that's true.
He's like, well, can he make the double nitro cappuccino or whatever it was that he wanted?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, because he's going to like sushi restaurants and he's living it up, but yet he goes for breakfast and his breakfast is just gruel and black coffee. Yeah, that is a fair point. I didn't actually make the connection there. You would just go and have sushi for breakfast, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you could have sushi like every day. It'd be great. And get Arthur to make a cup of coffee. What else is he going to do?
Oh, exactly, yeah. What is breakfast as a concept in space anyway when you're stranded? Forget it.
Yeah, like what time of day is it?
5
It's
o'clock
difficult,
all
isn't
the
it?
time.
Yes. Okay, nice. So we've got quite a few changes that are working really well. I guess the last bit's the end that we are. So yeah, the end as it stands, I think we can't use any of it.
No.
I guess there are threads of it we might be able to use.
It's a lovely idea that he's brought all this life into such a sterile robotic environment. It's lovely. It's a lovely concept, and it's a little bit Robinson Crusoe, and it's also a little bit Tarzan. But you don't see them. You don't see evidence apart from the shack that they were there, how long they lived, what did they leave behind? Did one die before the other one? Did they die together in some sort of twisted pact? Did she actually manage to murder him in the end? Or you don't know. And I guess the longevity of the story plays in your mind because you don't know, but it's not a satisfying I don't know, is it? It's
yeah. It's sort of like what? Yeah, it's unusual. It's a weird ending because they didn't leave anything behind. I mean, apparently Aurora left a voiceover.
Yeah,
that was what she left behind. But could she have done a novel? Like she's supposed to write a novel when she got to Homestead. Couldn't she write it about the adventures on the ship? That was our whole story. My dad told me to live an adventurous life, otherwise you have boring stories. And it's like, great, like use that, like do something there. Or do they have kids? Surely if they were that in love, they would have had kids and popped them in the auto dock and frozen them until they got onto the they could have had their space. And it's just it felt slightly unsatisfying.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So if we do go down the route of he's a psychotic killer and he woke up early, God forbid, who would have expected it to be an awful person? But it was, and he's doing awful things. And Gus, I guess the bit that I'm wondering is how does Gus get woken up? Is that another malfunction within the ship, or like how does she wake him up? Does she somehow figure out how Jim's? I don't know. Like how does, if we're not having the ship malfunctions, where does Gus come from?
I mean, it'd be funny if the waking up of people was done, on that massive computer that's, he goes to sit at and try and send a message from, and he mistakes Gus for like Gale or something, and partially wakes her up, and then realizes it's a bloke, and by then it's too late, and forgets about it, and then tries again and gets
Oh
Aurora.
no, it's a bloke. Oh no.
So I don't know, or gets drunk one night and just I don't know. I don't know. That is an interesting question, actually. How would he wake up if we're not going to have the whole malfunction thing? Um, maybe.
I mean, maybe she does it. Maybe she somehow figures out that they need a crew member and wakes
Yeah.
him up. Like maybe there's not, a mechanic. You doesn't have to pull a chip out. You might just go and push a button on the outside or
Yeah.
something. I mean, why wouldn't it be that easy that you could
That's
wake someone
true.
up with
An
a button?
emergency or
Because
something.
yeah, an emergency release button. So maybe she does that. But I guess would she not have done that straight away? So because this is where we get stuck in the loops of how,
Yeah,
why, and when.
that's it.
So
And
yeah,
that
so
makes her as
if
bad as
she
him,
wakes,
wouldn't it? If she got involved in waking people up, she is as bad as he is. So do you want to lose that sympathy
yes,
from her?
yeah. So I mean, do you think we should get rid of Gus if we can't give him a reason for waking
I
up?
don't know.
Because otherwise, it just becomes another. I don't know if he forward. I mean, he would forward the plot really because he'd kill him
Mm,
and he'd go missing and she'd be looking and find the husks.
yeah.
I like that we refer to them as husks. um, so maybe he is important because he does bring it along a bit. So I'm just wondering how he could wake up. So he gets woken up by a meteor strike,
Yeah.
and he's the only one, which is like crazy, but he's the only one. She gets woken up by manual.
Yeah.
He pops the thing open. In the original, how does he get woken up? Is it
I
the
think
computer wakes
yeah,
him up?
no, it's a series. It's a series of catastrophes that happen, isn't it? It's a series of failures, and his dock is one of those failures. Out of the 5,000, there's two malfunctions, which, as Arthur points out, is absolutely impossible the first time round, let alone the second. So, if we're removing the whole meteor thing, that kind of rising threat, what wakes Jim up in the first place? Is that still a malfunction? Are there still
Mm,
possibilities of malfunctions? Is it possible that actually Jim wakes up, he wakes up Aurora, Gus wakes up, Jim kills Gus, Aurora kills Jim, and then another Doc wakes up, and that's how we leave the
mm,
film, on that cliffhanger
yeah,
of hello, is there anyone there? End.
yeah, yeah. I guess we could even end with her. Is she about to?
Yeah.
She's so lonely. Does she do it as well? And then you never see. Or would that be too
I
unsatisfying?
don't know. I mean, the idea of being on my own seems like a really nice thing. It's the swimming pool and all of
Yeah,
them.
like I saw some of it. I was like, wow, this looks fun.
Maybe not for like 50 years. I just probably should say for the record, I'm very happily married and I love my husband and I'm not a man eater or anything like that. So, but yes, being on your own sounds like a very nice thing, but perhaps not for 40, 50 years. Um, yeah, so it's an interesting way of thinking. If we still wanted to keep Gus, how would we animate him, I guess. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, an error from him, like you say, could be quite interesting. Like if he is trying to wake up another woman, does he overlap them? Is that what he? How? Why would he be waking up another woman before Aurora? He's finished her off, kind of thing. Is this a thing that he normally does? Like, does he sometimes wake two up? I don't like
Yeah,
what.
why
Why would he
would
be trying to do wake another one? I mean, does it even have to be something that he's doing with waking people up? Could he be trying to? Is he slowly just hacking into various parts of the ship, and it's a mistake on his behalf that he
what if
pulls the wrong wire
he
or?
could see on Gus's wrist the little beepy thing And he was actually trying to get that. So he wasn't trying to wake him up. He was just trying to get into the pod to get the wrist thing that's going to get him what he wants. But inadvertently, he wakes up and is fit as a fiddle, absolutely fine, and walks around very smug for it as well with his little risky wrist beepy thing.
Yeah, I mean, she could walk it. He could wake him up, and when he's all floppy, he takes his thing off his wrist, and he's going to kill him. And she walks in, and he's like, "Oh look, there's a guy. He's awake!" And like he has to play
Yeah,
along
and
with
you
it.
dropped this, by
So
the way.
maybe, yeah. Oh, here's your band. Damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. I like that. So maybe he's what is he trying to do with his band? What is he trying to get in? Is he finally trying to get control of the ship?
Like, yeah, maybe.
Like, is he going to take it away? Yeah, like what is he going to do
So I
with
guess
it? Because I like the fact he's trying to
there's got to be some sort of something's limiting them. So she's this gold standard passenger, isn't she? She's got access to everything. But what if she didn't? What if neither of them did? But they knew that if they were gold standard passengers, that they could have a much better quality of life. They could live out the rest of their life on the ship in luxury, eating what they want and living where they want, and doing all of that. Maybe that's it.
Yes. So there's like a relatively selfish thing that he just wants better
Yeah.
stuff. So there's and she's like, oh, it doesn't matter, like we don't need any of that. And he's like, yeah, but there's a gold rimmed toilet in that bit, I want to go in there, kind of thing. And maybe it's him sort of getting too greedy, kind of thing, that he wants more
Or
and
just
more and
like
more,
if you
so he
think
decides to wake up Gus.
the TV program he wants to make life just so comfortable and perfect for the person that he's obsessed with. He wants them to be successful and have whatever they want. So perhaps he is kind of on that psychological abusive scale of, she's, I'm sitting there watching her eat her cube of gruel every morning, and she's clearly like miserable, and we can stare all we want through the glass doors of the sushi restaurant, but I can't take her for dinner in there. The best I can offer her is some peanuts in the bar and some more cubes of meat or something, processed imagined stuff. But giving her this kind of quality of life might just make her relax more into being in a relationship with me, and living out our lives in the way that I planned. That kind of manipulation.
I quite like what you're saying about you, where he's overbearing in the way that he's trying to provide, right? So there's a nature to what he's doing that is coercive. So he's sort of like obsessed with him giving her everything she needs, right? So, and she doesn't necessarily need it. So if they're in this situation, because I think if he was providing her with more than gruel, it might seem nice. Do you know what I mean? But if they've got an apartment thing, and she says, I don't know, I used to have a great vintage green writing lamp that I'd
Yeah.
used to write, but those have all gone. And then he's obsessed with getting whatever it is. She doesn't need that. Like, she doesn't need it. Like, and then he's obsessed with like ultra nesting so he can keep her as he wants her, kind of thing. So maybe there's something simple that he's trying to get that actually doesn't even mean that much to her, but he thinks that that's what they need to make them work. So that'd give us that's the reason he's waking Gus up to get the thing.
Gus.
Nice.
Yeah. Who would play Gus?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. I love Lawrence Fishburne. I think just put him in there.
A little bit old.
It doesn't matter how old he is. It doesn't matter how old he is. Just put him in there, because it's Jim who thinks that he's a threat. Like, Aurora might not even have a chance to even think, oh, he's nice.
This
like,
is true. Yeah, he's just got.
It might even make it weirder that he's not in the right bracket age-wise. He's just he can provide.
Yeah.
So then he thinks he's a threat, kind of thing. So that'd make it even more, because his perspective would be weird, right? Because he's crazy and he's been on this ship for years and he's been killing people. So it wouldn't be quite a normal way of looking at other people. It'd be quite unhinged. So I reckon keep Fishburne in there. I think
Okay,
he'd be great.
all right. Yeah, I like that. I like the idea, this kind of fatherly provider that, she would never be romantically interested in, but he is the threat because he can provide seamlessly what he can't. Yeah. Okay. So Gus is there. How's he doing away with Gus? How's he getting rid of him? Is he just going to throw him
So
out?
I think, yeah, I think I think there might be a bludgeoning.
Real physical.
I, yeah, like he wants to hit him over the head to start with, and that doesn't happen. So to have this full cycle of him eventually hitting him over the
Yeah.
head, maybe maybe it is him saying, "Look, I figured it out. I know how to fix the beds, and we can all go back to sleep." And he just smashes him over the head, and then jettisons the corpse into space. Like, is there? Does it need to be beyond that?
Well, I think if she's still in the kind of, I still believe this is a lovely serendipitous kind of relationship and we're just stuck in it together. If you want to keep that going, his death has got to appear to be accidental, or that Gus can't cope with living in this way anymore, and that's that. So if we're going down the brutal line, it needs to be justified. So, for example, like in Z for Zachariah, the male competition, I think they're trying to get water from this sort of, it's not quite a waterfall, but from this water that's cascading from a height, I guess is a waterfall, and they're trying to collect it or channel it, and he sends him up there knowing that he will slip and die, and he does. Because they're kind of a bit like, no, I can do it, no, I can do it, and so of course off he goes and he dies because he knows it's perilous, a futile way of doing it. So perhaps that's where Jim could outsmart. Yes, you might be the second in command of the ship or whatever your amazing title is, and you know all of that, but I'm an engineer and I know that piece of balustrade is not as sturdy as you think it is, and if you pull on it with your body weight, it will fall off and you will crumble and die, and that would be terrible.
Okay, yeah. So he makes it look like an accident, but he kills him, and then she gets suspicious, and then she finds the husk ladies, and he and then we're in the final stretch, right? So we are in the bit where he's killed everyone. We know he's killed a bunch of potential partners, or who he wanted to be his partner before, and it's all out in the open. And it's The Shining, and she's running for her
Can I
life,
just go
right?
back a step? I think these husk ladies,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah.
they need to be in their original docks. So she's kind of just haphazardly wandering around the 5,000 one evening while he's preparing an amazing romantic night or something, and she comes across some that just look shriveled and dead. And yeah.
But wouldn't she just think they'd malfunctioned if they
But
were in
what
the
if he
docks?
hasn't changed the panel that he's jimmied open, so that it
Yeah,
looks like a damaged pod and a dead woman? Maybe in the similar, I don't know, dress that he's given her, or something.
yeah. Maybe he's made it into like a cask. Maybe there's like flowers on it and stuff, and they're fresh flowers, so it goes
Yeah,
back
yeah.
regularly,
There's
kind of thing, to replace
like a
the
perfect red
flowers.
rose
Yeah,
in
that's
their
quite
hair or
cool.
something. And he's still
Yeah,
brushing it.
the husks. Oh, the poor
Yeah,
husk
well,
ladies.
we've gone into Norman Bates territory
Okay,
here.
cool. Nice. So he's
Yeah,
memorialized them
found that out.
in their pods, and she finds them. And is he a bit blasé about it? And then then she's like, "Okay, he's crazy. I need to run away." And then we're in the final stretch, and then we need to figure out. So she's going to kill him, right? She has to. We can't have this happen. And well, I guess we could suggest that he just kills her and then wakes up another one.
Well,
So
we can
morning.
borrow another aspect of a film. We can borrow the Truman Show. So when Truman escapes his inescapable world, he hides in plain sight. He hides in the one place that they don't think they will find him, on the sea, and when they do find him, out comes Christoph's booming voice of, "Where are you going? You can't leave." And you could have this, oh, actually, I was preparing this lovely romantic dinner. She hasn't turned up. And I go to the hall, I go looking for her, and I see she's opened the car. So, oh no, my secret is out. She can still do that whole running around the ship thing, running into dead ends. He can still do that over the tannoy. I'm in control here. What are you doing? It was all about you. I love you. I can't live without you. But then what happens? So where does she hide, or how does she confront him? Would she have the courage to? Has she arced enough to get to a point where she can bludgeon him? Is she a murderer, or does he need to do it himself?
So I quite like the idea that if he is on the tannoy and he knows she's found out, but he's still trying to convince her that he's right
Yeah.
for her, that he might refer to the other times it's
Mm.
happened. I know you're not like the other ones, and this isn't the first time this has happened. Is there? Are we seeing a repeat? Would it be almost suggested that she's being led down the same corridors that they were led
Yeah.
down? He's like, I'm good at this. Don't I've done this a few times, so you can't really escape, kind of thing. And does she then have to convince him that okay? Does she realize that there is literally no escape because he's killed 4 women already, and he knows every little rat run that she can get down, and she has to convince him that she's
I
cool with it,
quite like the idea that
almost like.
she might play into this and go, okay, fine, fine, whatever, don't kill me. I will do and be whoever you want me to be. And perhaps it does cut forward a good chunk of years, but the reveal is that she didn't endear that. She manipulated. I don't know. You probably wouldn't need to go that far ahead. You probably wouldn't even need to get to the point where everyone else wakes up, but I like the idea that she will play into that, because I think as a woman, when you think about all those situations that kind of make your skin crawl, and how am I going to get out of this, and actually if this is growing into a threat, how am I going to manage this? Like, default safety mode is go along, play along with it, and when you get the opportunity, then you can kick them in the nuts and run away, or poison their drink and deny all knowledge, and all of that kind of stuff, and not real life situations I've ever been in, just say. But I can imagine that kind of default setting of, I need to think about this really carefully, and I need to calculate how I'm going to survive this, and not be in such a reactive primal state. I don't know how interesting that is to see after so much physical drama. But it feels more like a genuine female reaction than just to reach for the crowbar.
I guess it's, would she genuinely say, let me think about it, or would she be lying to
Oh,
save her
lying,
life?
totally
Like,
lying.
so if she's lying, would she? Because if you think she's just found out these awful things, she's trapped on a ship with a murderer. Like, would she be able to do
Play
that?
along with it.
Like, yeah, I mean, personally, if I was in that situation, I'd be terrified. Like, there's a murderer. It's got me trapped in a ship. Like, I don't know if I'd be able to go, oh yeah, yeah, it's fine. Is that I know that's I guess it's quite a Hollywood thing for someone to have like nerves of steel in that way.
I think
Like, would we
I
go?
don't know. I think I'm going to throw something in that's possibly a bit controversial, but I think there's a difference in the way that, in that situation where you are faced with uh, a man who is clearly stronger than you, where you are overpowered, there's literally no way out. I think i think there's a lot of women that will have already had an escape route, a plan, a way of coping, a way of mitigating what could happen. And I think, to reflect that in real life, you only have to leave the pub at 11 o'clock at night and walk to the bus stop, and you've already got a plan in your head of what you will do in the event of someone wanting to walk with you, or someone wanting to attack you, or someone that you're approaching, or someone that's approaching you. And I think that it's very sad that that's the way that women think. I think that is the way that women think when they're faced with really challenging situations where they feel threatened, especially by a man. So I think that feels like a very natural way for someone to cope with it. It's not what you want to see, and it's not what you would want to see in the future either, depicted in a future scenario. But I think it feels very masculine that she's just going to reach for the crowbar and smash his head in and win the day.
Hmm. So
That would be
there's a
a huge
level of,
arc then, wouldn't it, for her to achieve that?
yes, yeah. So there's a level of
Yeah.
self-preservation in that, and it would be a natural thing to be able to do, to pretend that it was okay, and there was a visual level of submission. But then he'd have to have a comeuppance,
Oh yeah.
and that's where we get to where we're like, how would she survive this? Like, there's there's a gym killing coming up at some point, but it's like, how does it happen? Is it an off-screen thing, and we find him as a husk in in a a thing somewhere?
Yeah. With a crown of thorns.
Like, how?
I like the idea that she sort of reverses what he has done. So I kind of like, I like the idea that he's stolen away the freedom, he's taken away the life that she could have had. I like the idea that what he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want to be on his own. He doesn't want to live eternity without this company. He needs something. He needs someone. So I kind of feel, from this sort of female perspective, the way that you would expect this manipulation, this sort of slightly more emotional response, this emotional torture would feel crueler than that physical, you're dead and that's your punishment. You don't actually get to endure anything. I have endured, I'm going to make you endure. So I like the idea that she can somehow trap him in this situation where he cannot get out, but like, I don't know, force him to live his life out in the breakfast room where he can only have terrible coffee and cubes of gruel. So forever, and have no one to talk to and no way of getting out and no way of killing himself, and that's it. So they just find him with all his little breakfast trays, and he's just like an old dead man, a husk.
Nice. So what happens to her though? Does she just live out
Oh
her
no,
years?
she's worked out how to go back in the auto dock. I don't know, maybe Gus has imparted that information. He's just like, oh yeah, you just set the timer and get in. um so she, maybe that's it, or maybe she doesn't. Maybe she just enjoys a life of wandering around the ship and torturing him, poking the bear every so often, and kind of, hi, I'm going to hang out with Arthur today, see ya, and not see him for years, and then I don't know.
So if I like the idea of like the long torture because he's such an awful character. If we don't see it though, the years of it, it's going to be hard to depict it, kind
Yeah,
of thing. So if we find him as a husk of an old man who's been locked in the breakfast room, it's quite a big jump to try and figure that
yeah,
out with one
true.
scene, kind of
Yeah,
thing. So
yeah.
I like the idea that she punishes him. Like, I don't know what things are there that she could do where it's like this, that she could kill herself and leave him with no other option but to kill himself.
Well, he wouldn't. He'd just
Like,
wake
there
up
could
someone
be,
else, wouldn't he? He'd just do it again.
but I mean, if she can trap him
Oh, I
somewhere
see. Yeah.
and then remove herself from him,
Mm.
but then it would be, yeah, I don't know. Like, if she, we're nearly there. We're nearly
So
there. We've
close.
nearly got it.
So close.
So she's, if you look at The Shining, for
Mm.
example, which is insane in the last 25 minutes, right? So he kind of kills himself in a way through his own madness. I mean, she leads him into or Danny leads him into the maze, and he gets lost and he freezes to death in there, right?
Mm.
So, and that's because of he's just in a rage, and it's like he's almost like killer hubris of like, I can do anything and I can kill them. Like, is there some way we can get her to, you
Yeah.
know, overcommit to
Or is it
something,
less
or
predictable just to have him get away with it? Actually, you know, I keep thinking about I May Destroy You, and it's not a million miles away in that her liberty was stolen from her. You know, she was raped, and that she can't get that back. There's nothing to get that back, and she spends quite a lot of the time trying to work out what happened and also by who. And then there's a point where she confronts him. She sees him. She sees her attacker, and the brilliant thing about I May Destroy You is it's so much from the female perspective. In that several scenarios happen, how she deals with him. She kills him. She date rapes him, and and it all and actually, it turns out that all of those scenarios that took 40 minutes to unfold happen in a split second, and that is exactly how I would think out 20 different scenarios in a split second, and then I'm back in the present, and I still don't know what I'm going to do. But I still like this idea that actually in all of that, she's written the first thing to do was murder. Write that off. I don't want to do that. I want to make him suffer. I want him to feel what I have felt. Um, but is it more tragic to kind of for her to try and get that, but he wins over anyway?
yeah, I like the so the I May Destroy You. It's the last episode,
Yeah,
isn't it? And like she's got all those scenes where she's sitting outside the Ego Death
yeah,
bar, like hunting him in
yeah,
disguise, kind of thing. And then it keeps going through these like alternate, almost like feels like alternate realities, but it's really satisfying for the viewer to be with her in all of those scenarios. Because after scenario two, you're like, oh,
yeah,
okay, I think I understand what's happening here. And they're all, yeah, I mean, she rapes
yeah,
him, and it's just like, all of them are scenarios that you could be picking up the crowbar. Like, it's that kind of
yeah.
analogy. Like, all of them are scenarios where it's like that. And in the end, she walks away from
Mm,
it. And it's like, okay, like, there's something heartbreaking but empowering in that
yeah,
moment, like how she decides to do that by going through, like you say, in a split second, and then she stays in with a flatmate who's evidently
yeah.
lonely.
I'm not going to
And
let this rule my life anymore. I'm not going to let him
yeah,
rule who I am and continue to let him take my freedom by feeling overloaded by this and him. So this that separation, that and it's almost they still have to cohabit in a way, in I May Destroy You, there's still a chance that they will come up against each other. I don't know whether or not that sort of ending is possible when there's only two of them. But I do like the idea that she just goes, do you know what, actually, I don't, I'm just going to get on and two fingers up at you. It would be more satisfying to have that ending. And I think I May Destroy You definitely use that as a way of showing us what society is like. And she doesn't take it further because there's no point in her scenario because of, her ethnicity and the situation and, because she was drunk anyway. And, all of those little factors had an
yeah.
impact on why she walked away from that. Um,
So if we went down that route and she said, I don't care, he would probably kill her,
yeah.
right? So is that where we it wouldn't necessarily have to happen on screen, but do we end up, he's at breakfast, he's chatting
And
away,
it's another
and
girl.
it's someone
Yeah.
else, he's woken someone else up, and it's like, oh my god, it's ended and he's
Yeah.
won, and he's just going to go through these
And there's
cycles
another
until
bunch of
someone stops.
flowers appeared in the
Yeah.
hall of death.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe that is the way we go with it, even though it's not as satisfying. I don't know, it's unpredictable,
yeah,
and it's on her terms. She says, do you know what, I'm not doing this.
no,
And he kills her off screen, but it was on her terms. She said, I'm not agreeing to this, do what you will.
yeah, because I'd
And
rather
then
be
he
dead than
starts with
spend an
another.
eternity with you. That's like her last
Yeah,
line.
nice.
Yeah,
That's a good line, I like that.
I think it. I think.
Okay.
I think if she knew she was going to die, I feel like if for her it was live with him or die, and those are the two stark options, would she be more likely to take her own life so that she can't let him have that? He's taken her life, don't let him take her death as well, type thing.
Hmm. So does he is it, I mean, again, it's a bit Route One, but does he chase her into an airlock and
Mm,
she releases it rather than him?
yeah.
He's like, "Come on, come out! I don't want to have to kill you." And she's like, "Do you know what?
Mm.
You don't have to." Beep, and then she's
Yes,
gone,
yeah.
and then
And we get to see her slowly
preserved in space.
shrivel and
Yeah,
implode, and yeah, and that's
yeah.
one
He'd be
husk
like,
he
"No,
will
my
never
husk."
ever have. He's putting the flowers by the dock instead.
Okay, I think
Yeah,
that's probably more satisfying. She finished
yeah,
herself off, and then do we have the throw forward that
yeah.
he's just woken
I
another
like
one
the
up?
idea that
Yeah,
he's like, there, next. Not learn from it. He's just a complete
yeah,
crazy psychopath, and he will carry on.
yeah. For like 5 or 10 minutes, is completely
Yeah,
inconsolable, and then he moves on to the next
yeah.
husk. Okay, so that I think there's some really interesting stuff in here, and the sort of points, the way we've discussed the points has sort of gone a bit deeper than potentially the original script did in sort of the way relationships work, particularly between opposite genders, and the power over aspect of relationships, particularly when there's a lot of gaslighting, like there is in
Mm,
this kind of thing. Um, so if we go back to the start, we decided that we wanted a few more surprises in this script because it was quite Route One. We wanted it to feel like it was one thing and then completely become another. Um, so we do that by keeping the idea of the story the same, that they are woken up. Jim has been woken up earlier, but we start with Aurora. We come in late, which is always a way to spice a script up. You come in late, something's already happened, something big, and she's woken up. She finds Jim. It's all great. She's terrified. He provides comfort for her, um, and it all seems fine. And they just become they fall into a relationship. But some weird stuff starts to happen, like Arthur says, "Oh, he woke you up, didn't you know that?" And then tries to cover it up like it was a mistake or a malfunction. Um, Through their nesting, Jim tries to get into another part of the ship to get some trinket for her that he thinks is important because he's overcompensating, trying to make their relationship work. He wakes up Gus, tries to nick his bracelet and kill him, but she comes in. She finds where he is and she's like, "Oh my God, there's someone awake." And he's like, "Yeah, look, he just woke up," and tries to cover up that he was going to bludgeon him to death. Um, Gus is a bit of an obstacle for Jim, so he ends up dispatching him in what looks like an accident because Gus admits he can fix the pods and he can solve all their problems, but Jim just wants to keep this thing going. He does not want to change it. So he makes it look like Gus dies in an accident in one of the loading bays. Um, Aurora starts to get a bit curious about why this has happened. She's concerned about all the little breadcrumbs she's found along the way that things aren't as she thinks they are. She goes hunting and finds some husks in in some husks of Jim's previous partners in pods that he has adorned like a coffin. And then, as in the original script, she runs off around the ship and he knows where she is. He's trying to talk her down on the tannoy, admitting that this isn't the first time it happens, but he thinks this is the one. Ends up chasing her into an airlock and sort of says, "Come on, like, this is it. You either come with me or I'll kill you." And she says, "No, you can't, because I'm going to end it." And she kills herself, drifts off, and he doesn't get to keep that husk. And then we jump forward a little bit and he's having breakfast with someone else, and he's going to do it again,
I like that.
and that's the end
I
of the
like
film.
it. I think we should
That's the end of
probably
the
throw in
film.
at the beginning, because there's not much of an arc for her apart from she makes a decision in the end, doesn't she? She makes a clear decision about what she's going to do with her life. So perhaps in the beginning, when she's woken up, she didn't want to leave Earth, but she's kind of following I don't know, her friend or her dad, or you know, there's some sort of people-pleasing element about why she's on that ship in the first place. So she can arc into
Yeah,
this person that makes a decision about her own life, I think.
nice. Okay, yeah, I like
Mm.
that. I like this film.
Yeah,
I think we should get this film
definitely.
made. Like, surely, how much do you think it costs? Like 90 million or something? Maybe a little bit more.
Mm.
Maybe less. I guess we could just use the same corridor again and
Exactly,
again, right?
yeah.
It's
I
fine.
got some
Yeah,
Lego
yeah,
lugging around somewhere.
yeah. There we go. I got loads of it.
Ah, feels very satisfying taking a
Awesome.
romance and turning it into a very dark thriller. Hmm.
Yeah, I think that lies within us all, doesn't it? So thanks so much, Helen. That was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. I think
I
we
really
covered
need
some
to,
good
I've been
stuff
holding
there.
on to this for a long time, so I feel like I've unpacked, I feel like I've opened up, I feel like I've moved on. So thank you for the closure.
Good. There's a level of therapy in these in these podcasts. So thank you everyone for listening. This has been Great Hollywood Rewrite. If you want to check out more stuff that we do, we've got a whole global network of screenwriters. Just go over to thescriptdepartment.net and find out what we've been up to. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. It really helps us. If you've got any suggestions for what we might do next week, either a movie or a TV show that you think needs a good rewrite, just drop it in the comments or message us directly. And we look forward to hearing what you come up with. Nice one.